From Mysterious Galaxy. I am very pleased to introduce you guys to Richard Fairgray. He is celebrating his comic with us today, which is Black Sand Beach. Are You Afraid of the Light? Which I love that title, by the way. It's just absolutely awesome. So I am going to go ahead. I'm going to fade away into the background for a second. I'm going to let Richard talk about his book and some fun stories and everything. And then I'm going to pop back on and we're going to do a fun Q&A. So if you have questions, make sure that you go ahead and start commenting those down below. Richard, I will see you shortly.
Fantastic. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Fairgray, and I am the author and artist on Black Sand Beach, Are You Afraid of the Light? The first graphic novel in the ongoing series, which all going well will consume me for the rest of my entire life. I grew up in New Zealand. It's a very faraway place, tiny little country that many people think is just part of Australia, but it is in fact its own unique 3 islands that are just invisible on most maps. And the thing about New Zealand is it's a very new country, and so there's not a lot of spookiness to it. So when you find something spooky, you really relish it. I was very lucky that my family had built a beach house. And when I say my family built a beach house, I don't want you thinking this is like fancy and nice. I mean, my family literally built themselves a beach house in a tiny little town. It was the ricketiest, falling apartiest here's a picture of it that I've ever seen. I'm wondering if I can press my picture and make myself bigger so I can see what I'm doing. I can! Oh, that's amazing. That's much better. So this was the house that my father and my aunt built together. It was on poles, and it would shake violently when twice a year a cattle stampede would go through underneath it. One year, we accidentally caught a baby cow in a hammock that we left up. And Sitch, come here. Hey. I'm sorry, I'm dealing with my dog who eats Christmas lights at the same time as this. Her name is The Situation, and she is lovely, but every now and again I hear the sound of smashing plastic, and I discover she's found another Christmas light somewhere in my house. So, Black Sand Beach is a fictionalized version of my childhood, because the thing about Black Sand Beach, or as it is in real life, the Potu Peninsula, there is the oldest lighthouse in New Zealand there. It was never a very good lighthouse. It never worked very well. And as a result, many shipwrecks happened at that beach. The lighthouse was decommissioned about 100 years ago. But throughout my childhood, my cousins and I would go and explore all of these shipwrecks that were like covered by the sand and would be revealed anew each time there was a big windstorm. And then one year we were out there, there's the haunted lighthouse. Well, we didn't know it was haunted then, I guess. But we went out to this lighthouse, and we got stuck there by the tide at night, and we couldn't go back along the beach because of the tide. But we also couldn't go back through the woods, because the woods are just the creepiest place in the whole wide world, especially at night. And we used to have a lot of problems with people going through there in their cars and their motorized bicycles. So we would dig big holes and cover them with ferns so that people would get trapped. And we didn't want to fall into our own traps by walking through there at night. So we decided to stay in this lighthouse. Here it is right there. As the horrible tides that had come out of nowhere kept us trapped. Now, in the middle of the night, I woke up and there was a light coming from upstairs. This is Dash, sort of based on me, but he wakes up in the night and he sees this light. He goes upstairs, and this lighthouse that hasn't worked in over 100 years is suddenly on, and the light is shining out across the ocean, and everyone who's ever died in a shipwreck is crawling out of the water and screaming at him, "Why have you turned the light out?" And that was exactly what happened to me when I was 8 years old. And the difference between me and Dash is that Dash is immediately terrified because he's seeing ghosts. I, on the other hand, was delighted because I've always wanted to be best friends with a ghost. So I ran down the stairs to go and see these ghosts in person. I opened the door. Once I was outside the lighthouse, the light was off and everything was gone. Now, I've been talking about this for 27 years now. I've been telling this story any chance I get because my goal in life is to one day become a ghost. And my goal for most of my life has been to become friends with a ghost. I have become friends with one ghost in my life, and he did save my life, but there's a whole other story that I already told in an interview earlier today, so why would I bother doing it again? Sorry, I'm on my phone that's going to make noises. The magic of Zoom. But a few years ago, I was working on a comic series that, due to unforeseen circumstances with all kinds of other issues with another book, my series got put on hold with zero warning. And I was in the middle of planning a wedding, a big Halloween-themed wedding to my now husband, and building a haunted house for the wedding guests to go through. Because obviously, you know, traditionally weddings have a haunted house. A lot of people forget that, but of course you need it. And I was quite busy. I didn't have time to do anything. I'd find another job and find a new thing, or like figure out what to do about my comic series being put on hold. And luckily, because I always have very good luck, I get a call from an editor that I used to work with years and years and years before saying, I can't tell you anything. I'm with a new company, but please come in to pitch and have an idea for a series. So I didn't know if they wanted something for adults. I didn't know if they wanted something for kids. I didn't know what it was. But I was going on my honeymoon to New York anyway. I didn't have time to prepare anything because I was building this haunted house, and I had like 30 people coming to stay because we got married in Canada, and just terrible choices all around. Plus, I had to build a lot of like full-size human skin suits out of felt for the haunted house, and, you know, just for fun. And so I didn't have anything ready at all. I get into this meeting on my honeymoon after we've done like one touristy thing in the morning, which was go to the Statue of Liberty. So I walk in, my hair is sort of more like this than anything else. And I sit down, and my editor my former editor, who I was meeting again, said, what do you have? And I said, what age range? And she said, anything up to about 13. And I said, all right, I want to tell the story of the haunted lighthouse. And I told her all about Black Sand Beach, because in New Zealand, we really do have beaches where the sand is black because there's so much iron in it. And it's really cool because it means the sand is magnetic and you can move it around with magnets, which I'm going to show you a picture of right now. We used to be able to like drag the sand around with magnets and like draw pictures and stuff, which was all fun. But I just made it up. I just pretended like I'd been working on this book for years and not just casually telling the story when I was at parties. And she loved it. She was fascinated by the ghost. She was fascinated by the world of it all. And she said, okay, and what are you picturing this as? And I said, I think this should be 3 64-page graphic novels. Pulled that number just out of my ear. Don't know what I was thinking, but I said 3 64-page graphic novels. Why not? I have time to do that at some point. And she said, cool, okay, we'll get back to you with an offer. An offer came in. Now, I know that from the discussion so far, where you've learned that I want to be a ghost and be friends with ghosts, and I've also picked 2 things out of my teeth and pretended that you couldn't see me on the camera, and I did name my dog The Situation. So you're thinking, this guy's a responsible adult. I have never, in my life, read a contract before signing it. I know I should, because I've had several things go really wrong, but I have not yet learned this lesson. I got the term sheet. I looked at the basics. It said they wanted 2 books. They were going to meet my page rate. So I said, fine. I was a little disappointed that it wasn't going to be 3, but 2 would do. I agreed to the deadline. I had 4 months to get the first book done. Now, I work fast, so that's really easy. 64 pages in 4 months is nothing for me. 6th day in to the project, I had not started because it was easy. I get a call from my editor, and she says, are you sure you can get this done in time? You know, we can look at maybe finding like an extra week. And I was like, no, it's easy. It's only 64 pages. And she said, no, Richard, it's 2 books, each one containing 3 64-page stories. We need 192 pages plus covers finished within 4 months. At which point I moved full-time into my office, and I bought in bulk 20,000 adult premium body wipes so I wouldn't have to go home to shower. And I ordered all my food in, and I didn't leave the building, which had nothing but cold water that was not drinkable, for the next 9 weeks. And I went a little bit mad. And I have 2 permanent chemical burns from the adult premium body wipes, which turned out to not be the highest quality. I never, ever, ever in my life want to see another Alfredo chicken and broccoli microwave meal. And I maybe made a bad choice writing a very scary book about a haunted lighthouse when my office is in a haunted complex in Hollywood that literally has a haunted lighthouse in it. So that every night at about 3 a.m. when I was having to work like basically in the dark with one lamp down below the windows, because technically I wasn't allowed to be there and I had to hide from security, the red glowing light from the creepy haunted lighthouse at the back of the place did not make me feel super safe. Also, at 2:30 every morning, the cops would go through and clear out all the crazy people from Hollywood Boulevard, and they would all just filter 2 blocks south and try and climb the gates to get into my office. And if I had the light on at about 3 a.m., they would try and climb the walls to get into my office like moths to a flame. Sorry, my dog is now whimpering. She is fine. She is very well fed. I just am not letting her eat Christmas lights. But my point is, I tell people this story about making this book. And by the way, I finished it early. But I tell people this story, and I go, oh, that's horrible. Oh, that sounds terrible. How did you deal with that? I can't imagine. Your job is so difficult. And my job isn't the easiest job in the world. Like, yes, I get to draw pictures for a living. My glasses are so dirty. Everything looks blurry. Hang on. You're seeing my wobbly, funny eyes now. Yes, my job is not the easiest in the world. And yes, it can be like painstakingly difficult. And yes, I am like legally blind and I draw these pictures. But no, it turns out my screen is just dirty, not the glasses at all. That's cool. I'm really sorry, guys. You're seeing a blurry version of me. Cool. But the thing is, that kind of obsession, that like giant slumber party where I did nothing but work on my book, and I got to live in this terrifying world and think about nothing but these characters and what they were doing. I'm gonna have to call my dog over. Sitch, come here. Come here. Come here. Well, now she's ignoring me and not whimpering, so that was pointless. I was gonna get to see my dog, but you won't. Come over here, Sitch. Come on. Now she's just staring at me. I do have a dog. She does exist. I'm not crazy. But my point is, that was the most fun I've had in years. It was the best. Like, I look back on those 9 weeks of not leaving that building, and here she is. There she is. I look back on those as being the most exciting and fun work I've done in a really long time. And the thing is, I think it really is the best book I've ever made. And I think because if you're a writer, it has to come from obsession, especially if it's comic books, because comic books are all-consuming. Especially if it's a comic book where you've created the characters yourself. You have to know, like, you have to live and breathe every part of that world. And when you get to be that deep in something, it's the best feeling of this thing that I've coined the term miserable fun. It's something that is so exciting to do, because no matter how bad it is, you know it's going to make a good story later. And so I always tell people, if you're going to be a writer, if you're going to make comic books, you have to find a way that literally every part of your day is you thinking about that comic, whether you have another job or not, whether you're thinking about other things along the way or not. As long as you are always keeping that thing in your head and keeping that story alive, then you have that obsession. And that's what makes it, that is what will make it the best possible and possibly crazy inducing job, but it is still the most satisfying thing in the world. So I've shown you some pictures from the book. It's, you know, the fundamental parts of it are that this boy Dash and his best friend Lily and his cousins Eleanor and Andy are basically they're spending the summer at this beach house on a beach at the end of the world, at the edge of the world, like the place where the darkness is literally seeping through from another reality and trying to like pervert and corrupt every part of this world. So anything in this place can become twisted, spooky, dark, demonic, whatever. And you never know what's going to go wrong. The bigger mystery starts to build in this first book. Dash, formerly known as Harry Gilbert West, but now goes by the hyphen between the two names because Dash sounds cooler than hyphen, and Harry and Gilbert are both dumb names, he thinks. Although I like them. They're names of two dogs I know. I do name all my characters after dogs. That is one limitation I have found. I'm not good at names. So Dash is named after my now dead dog Dasher. Harry and Gilbert are two. It's a long story. But they're spending their time just battling the forces of evil and also trying to have just like a super fun summer and play with magnets and stuff. And I've already finished the second book, which I did in the same obsessive way. And once this lockdown started and everything in the world went crazy, I decided to start doing short horror stories set in the same world. Because before Black Sand Beach became like a completely deserted place with nothing but these two houses, the Mulchuck house where the creepy mutants live down the street, and the West house, which is much like the Fairgray house. It used to be a bustling town where all kinds of creepy stuff was already happening and no one ever seemed to notice. And so I did a 6 episodes podcast called Tales from Black Sand Beach, which focuses on a box of dictaphone tapes that I found left by a journalist who went missing at the beach years ago. And now this is a big sneak preview. All 6 episodes of that are available anywhere you can stream things. They're all 6 or 7 minutes long each, just great short horror stories told by this journalist and a waitress that he talks to. I don't like to brag about reviews, 43 5-star ratings, but the best review I've ever had of anything is when we made the first episode. I have a friend who has 5 children because he was bored, I guess, who ranged from 9 to 15. And he got all 5 of them to listen to the first episode before anyone else had. And the second oldest and second youngest both got so scared they had to leave the room. The second oldest, on her way out, standing up to get away from the phone, kicked the middle child in the mouth, who sat there and listened through the rest of the story with her mouth bleeding because she was so captivated by the horror story in it. So that's my brag. That's my that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said. Like, in terms of the, I know that Morris Sendak had the kid who ate the envelope, and that's just way more adorable, but I caused someone to get kicked in the mouth, and they still didn't leave. So, again, taking off my glasses to show you my wobbly weird eyes, and I'm going to read one of the short stories that we're in talks about doing a book of tales from Black Sand Beach, of short horror stories set in the same world. Not about the main characters, not set during the same time period, but just to give you a sense of the spookiness of the world. And again, I apologize, literally 3% vision in this eye, none in this one, so I'm gonna have to hold my computer screen up and read to you. So let's hope this goes well. I don't have a printer at home and I'm locked out of my office. My amazing office with a haunted lighthouse. Anyway, this story, I literally wrote this about an hour ago. So no one has heard it yet. No one has had any chance to review it for anything, but this is a story called Just a Second. Enlarge the print for myself. Charlie Malone had died, but just for a second. It had happened when she'd been playing with her brother at the beach. They'd been running up to the edge of the water as each wave drew out, then fleeing for the high ground as the next one crashed ashore. The water was too rough for swimming at Black Sand Beach, so getting your feet a little wet was the next best thing. Charlie's brother tells it like this. He was winning. He was keeping his feet totally dry every time, even though he was much braver than Charlie and getting super close to the water before turning to run away. He was in the air, jumping really high toward the dry sand when he heard his sister cry out. She'd stepped on some softer, sludgier sand and toppled forward. The wave enveloped her and pulled her into the shallow water. He swears that he saw her flip over 6 times before the next splash of the tide threw her limp body back onto the beach. Her brother ran over to help her. She wasn't breathing, but her eyes were open. She was just staring up at the sky. And that's when she died, but just for a second. The doctors who saw her later said they'd never seen anything like it. Her brother said he actually saw her life leaving her body, but then she opened her mouth and drew it all back in one really big breath. Charlie had just lost a second, but she never managed to make up that time. She was always just a second too late, just a second off. At 7 a.m. the next morning, Charlie's alarm clock began to chime. It jolted her from her sleep and left her feeling shaken, as if she'd been pulled from a deep slumber too suddenly. It left her a little queasy for most of the morning. The day before, and every day for as far back as Charlie could remember, she'd woken up just before the alarm was set to go off. A few days later, Charlie knocked a cup of hot chocolate with her elbow, and by the time she reached out to grab it, it had already hit the floor. Little things like that didn't matter so much, not being the first one to get the right answer, coming in second in running races at school, almost getting caught by every closing door or gate. These were things that Charlie could deal with. But Charlie started to lose people. She started to lose her friends. The other kids thought it was weird the way that Charlie would pause for a second when they said hello to her, or how there seemed to be a brief delay when she was talking. So she'd always overlap with someone by just a little bit. The teachers thought she was just being rude. Soon Charlie was eating her lunch all by herself every day. It was a few months later that her parents decided to go back to the beach for the weekend. They knew Charlie had been having trouble at school, and they thought a break might set things back to normal. Charlie's mother had noticed how distant Charlie seemed now, but she couldn't put her finger on why. Sometimes when Charlie was sleeping, her mother would watch her and wonder why the daughter she used to love now made her feel so uncomfortable to be around. The difference was imperceptible. Her mother could never have found the words to say how strange it was that the sound of Charlie's snoring no longer lined up with her breathing in and out. Charlie's father, who had always been a quiet and thoughtful man, found it troubling the way that Charlie would trip on things 1 or 2 steps after her foot hit them. He found himself wanting to yell at her to snap out of it, and he didn't like feeling this angry at his own daughter, so instead he kept his distance too. Charlie's brother used to have a lot of fun throwing things at Charlie, but now the way that she didn't try to block them until they'd already hit her face just made the game feel sad. So maybe that's why they weren't really paying attention when Charlie was playing on the side of the water again, her pant cuffs soaked through from every wave that she ran ashore with. They looked up just in time to see a much bigger wave about to crash down on her. They called out to warn her, and if she'd moved just a second faster, she would have been all right. Charlie Malone died, and it was forever, because there was no such thing as only dying for a second. So that is my story that I wrote today. I hope it's scary and creepy, and I hope it isn't just me being obsessed with the idea of being slightly out of time. And Sitch is back. Oof, she probably got scared. Oh, she's kicking me in the stomach. Come on, calm down. All right. And so that's kind of all I really have to say. So now I'm hoping that our lovely host will come back and then questions will begin.
I'm back. I loved that story. I thought that was awesome. I definitely had a good creepy factor, and the ending was just really I really liked that a lot.
Thank you. It's a first draft.
Stories in our house, so.
It might get changed a lot. That's a first draft. Literally, I just wrote it while I was making dinner. So we'll see.
That's a really good sounding first draft. I love, like you said, like the concept of always being a little bit out of time. I thought it was very beautifully, like you just got a really good feel of it in that story. And I think we all at some point feel like we're a little bit out of sync with the world around us too. So, okay, so.
Thank you.
To start off, because this story is based in New Zealand, you did talk about the Black Sands. Are there any other things that are unique to New Zealand that you feel like appear in these comics that as Canadians or as Americans or as people from other countries will be like a really cool introduction to something in New Zealand?
Well, the comic itself isn't specifically set in New Zealand. I always try and write stories that, like, Black Sand Beach could be anywhere, because I think it's much scarier. It's the thing is, like, what is unique to New Zealand is that feeling of absolute isolation. You know, we are so far from everything. When I was a kid, I remember I was maybe the first time I ever knew that a TV show was new was I knew that Ninja Turtles was new, and I knew that The Simpsons was new. But the first time a live action show was new was Power Rangers. And it was really strange to me to be seeing something that was actually like current, because all the other shows I watched, I mean, maybe they were new, I didn't know. But then there was this, you know, like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air might as well have been Beverly Hillbillies as far as I was concerned. Everything was just felt old because it was always getting to us a little too late. And then there's this episode of Fresh Prince where the girl he's dating, Lisa, kicks someone in the face, and he says, "What are you, a Power Ranger?" And I was like, oh, this is current. And feeling like being so used to that isolation and that distance is something that, you know, I think there are plenty of places in the world that feel like that. So I didn't want Black Sand Beach to just be, it's New Zealand. Partly because the real lighthouse from the story now has like a cafe where you can go and have a coffee before you go. Like, it's not spooky anymore.
It's a little less scary.
But it's still, you know, I think like that isolation is there. The fact that one of the few New Zealand language, you know, dialectic things I still hold on to is I call the woods the bush. I've tripped up on that a couple of times in the book, I think. I don't know if we ever caught it. Because like in America, you have woods, you have big tall trees all near each other. In New Zealand, we have bush. There are big trees and they're all 500 years old, but it's this dense scrub underneath it all, which is what makes it so like dark and tangled. And then also the fact that there is a sheep. In real life, there was a sheep named Alabama who everyone had seen dead, okay? Everyone has seen this sheep dead in a ditch. This was a wild sheep who roamed the peninsula, and like we would regularly get trapped on top of the water tank because the sheep was nearby and we couldn't be down on the ground and we couldn't get back into the house. My father once had to be lifted into a window because the sheep had like been out there for so long and wouldn't leave and he needed to poop. So I think like the idea of wild roaming sheep is very New Zealand. And in this, I have a sheep named Ramses, he's also green because, you know, it seemed cooler to have a bright green sheep roaming around, being all diseased and disgusting, and everyone having a story about the time they saw it get hit by a car and definitely die or fall off a cliff or some other equivalent. Oh, your picture has gone. Have I lost you? Oh dear, I'm all alone. I'm all alone in the Zoom chat now. Okay. Oh, you're back?
I am so sorry. My computer did the thing where it crashed on me.
That is okay. You left me alone. I told a lot of secrets. Not really.
I missed all of the good things.
Listen, you know, they say it's dangerous for one person to have the nuclear codes, so I just gave them to everyone. I hope that's cool.
Well, okay. I do have more questions.
Oh, good.
Minus the fact that I've now missed all of the amazing secrets. I think that's cool, though, that the bush does make me laugh a little bit because I have heard people say that, and I'm always like, but wait, shrubbery? And I'm like, wait, no, different things. So
it kind of is like shrubbery. And imagine if shrubbery was evil. Like, imagine if shrubbery was trying to suffocate everything around it.
So just picture the new, like, Maleficent shrubbery, essentially.
Yeah, that's New Zealand.
So then, you kind of mentioned this, how your short stories connect into it. But can you give us a little bit of the backstory of the beach? Because it doesn't sound like it was always this deserted, haunted place kind of in the middle of nowhere. So can you give us a little insight into why did all the people leave?
Well, I can't give away too much because that will be in later books. But I want people to know that something has happened there to make everyone leave. Or perhaps the people are still there and just trapped, maybe under the sand, because the sand, I mean, there's a lot of, you know, there's if you look at old maps, they'll often have the word Finisterre, which means the edge of the world. And what it meant on old maps was, we don't know what's beyond this. We think that's the edge of the world. Mm-hmm. It's where you get phrases like, you know, here there be dragons. And you'd have like sometimes pictures of sea monsters to kind of denote this is the edge of the known reality. Beyond this is unknown. And so my idea is that wherever Black Sand Beach is, it literally is the edge of our world. Maybe not geographically, but like there are certain things that if you're really astute, you'll notice when you're reading the book, like that none of the kids' hair ever moves because there's no wind at Black Sand Beach, but the ocean is very rough. So something is making that water move.
Yeah. Oh.
There's an energy and there is a darkness. And there's also like, there's a lot of implied backstory, like how on earth did the family get but why on earth would they build their holiday home here? I guess it was cheap real estate, but also what happened to the Uncle Frederick, who for some reason is entirely in black and white now, and every time he opens his mouth, darkness pours out. So
these are just even more little tidbits that make you guys need to read this.
I'm really, like I've been obsessed with horror stories my whole life, and my favorite feeling is being afraid. That kind of like, I just want to be hugged and I feel cold inside. That's such a good feeling to have, and I want to capture that in stories. And I think that when you're a kid, you can be fascinated by one little idea, and so I'm trying to take those little ideas and just twist little things from reality. There's a story in the second book. It's just a little short story, but the kids are out on an adventure, and the parents are playing this board game based on a real, very boring board game that my father invented. But they're playing this game, and they are all getting bored with each other. And there's a lot of tension between the father, the stepmother, the aunt, and the uncle. But it's all kind of hidden because they're adults, And they find one of those little toys that Pizza Hut used to give out, where it's like half a rubber ball, and you turn it inside out and you put it on the table, and the pressure slowly builds, and then it pops in the air. But the thing is, when something is left at Black Sand Beach for too long, it starts to absorb some of this darkness, and so you never know what it's going to do. And so when they turn the toy inside out and they put it on the table, everything changes color and turns upside down. And everyone, they don't know why, but they start feeling this immense pressure. And the toy is getting flatter and flatter as the pressure increases. And they're getting, all of the parents are slowly being pressed into the ground. And at the same time, all of their darkest thoughts are coming out. And they start saying the nastiest things that they've all always thought about each other, to the point where they're like smacking each other with fry pans, and the uncle just smashes a chair and starts stabbing a wall, and the darkness is pouring out of him because it just can't be held in because there's too much pressure, and then the toy pops. And everything's undone, and they don't remember it, and it all goes back to normal, and they keep playing the game. And the thing pops in the air and lands in the rafters in the kitchen, and it's there, and we know it's there, and now the readers know what it does. And we know there's always the potential for someone to take it and be like, hey, this is fun, and do it again. Yeah. But who knows if, like, those things, sometimes they pop in 5 seconds. Sometimes they last for like several minutes. Sometimes they last for hours because they've gotten too old. And like, what kind of damage could be done if that thing was inside out for too long?
Yeah.
So there's the kind of fun.
Before you talk about it, I'm like, there's all these cool little like facets of this world that you've created. So I think kind of tying in to horror and everything is that, what do you feel like is kind of where you find that line where you can still keep those amazing horror elements, but also still keep it kind of in like age appropriate, for lack of a better way? What kind of do you feel like separates it from being purely adult horror?
I think that children are afraid of very different things than adults.
Okay.
Adults are afraid, but like there's a universality to fear, right? We're all afraid of loneliness. We're all afraid of boredom. We're all afraid of death. But children are not afraid of, like, we're afraid of getting old and dying, or getting sick and dying. Children are afraid of running too fast at something. So when we have these children being afraid, it's because they're on an adventure and they're delighted by it. And I think the way that you always keep a book age appropriate is, if the main characters are kids, no matter how bad things are getting, they still have to be having a pretty good time, even if they're scared. And I'm not like a big fan of gore. I think there's a lot of horror stories that are shocking for the sake of being shocking. Like, oh my God, my fingers all got cut off and eaten by a snake. I don't care. I'm not, I am so much more scared as like, if you've seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that movie is not very scary once they're dealing with Leatherface. But at the point where they're in a car with that hitchhiker and he's just talking and like holding his knife and you don't know what he's going to do, that freaks me out every time. So there's nothing, you could show anyone that. There's nothing age inappropriate about it. It's going to unsettle you. Being unsettled.
It's the dialogue and the suspense and just the like, that unnerving quality that you just feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like all my favorite stories growing up, like I was so excited when Goosebumps first started because it was the first time I'd seen like horror from my age. And like, I mean, some of Goosebumps is good, some of it's bad and whatever, but say cheese and die. The idea of a camera that can take a picture that'll show how you're going to die a few minutes from now. Yeah. That is terrifying. And that's scary to me as an adult. It was scary to me as a kid. And it's just, but I'm, you know, I think part of it is that I know that at the end of the book, it's going to be over. And if you show a kid a scary movie, they have to keep watching the movie. You can't pause a movie halfway through if you're watching it with other people. So maybe some movies are too scary for some people. But a book, if I'm too afraid, oh, it's gone. I'm okay. I can hold this book closed. I want to go back into it. Oh, I like being scared again. So that I think you can do a lot scarier stuff in books than you can in TV or film. But I think just I don't have violence, and I don't have and the kids are the heroes.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's such a good point too. There's a certain power that books have in being able to tune into the imagination of the readers as well, where it creates this great partnership between you as the author and the reader, where you get to kind of pluck different strings and different reactions from their brain, but also get them to come back in because they need to know what happens. So I think this is a fun question to kind of end it on, but also when I'm very curious. So in this world that you have created, if you had a day to spend in it, with the very important caveat that you would not die, what would you do? Is there a specific place you'd want to go see? Is there any interesting food you'd want to go eat? What would you want to do in this world?
If I knew that I couldn't die, I would go into the ocean.
Important caveat, but yes, you wouldn't die. You what?
I would immediately go into the ocean. I would want to find out what was underneath there, what was causing this. If I could walk headfirst into that horror, I would absolutely do it. But even I'm afraid of that.
Oh, that makes it that makes me want to know what's in the ocean now.
I mean, I will say, like, this book is, I think it's always a good sign but it very rarely happens. This is the first thing I've written where I've legitimately scared myself in writing.
Oh, that's hard.
I'm going to show you a picture from my favorite picture in this whole book. The first two stories are all about the haunted lighthouse, and then there is a third story called Definitely Not a Cow. And this is based on real events, but it's also based on that feeling you get when you're at a friend's house and you find out that their parents don't like you. And that's something all kids are terrified of happening, because then you're uncomfortable all the time. It's how I feel in America. But basically, everyone in the family eats these weird purple things they say are potatoes, but definitely aren't. And everyone falls asleep. And Lily doesn't eat them. And she's weirded out by why they're suddenly sleeping. And then she hears, and it's the night of the cattle stampede. And everyone's sleeping through it, and the house starts to shake. And she walks over to the window, and instead of seeing cattle, she sees definitely not cows. These bipedal green horses with turtle hands and mouths in their stomachs, with glowing eyes, marching underneath the house. And the next day, when everyone's still acting weird and their eyes have all turned purple, they find one of these definitely not cows trapped in the hammock. And they all think it's a cow. And they all think it's so cute. And only Lily can see that it's not. And so when they bring it into the house as a pet, and then start forgetting Lily was there at all, and then one morning, it's wearing Lily's clothes and she's locked outside.
Oh.
That actually writing it scared me.
There's something I think that's just ingrained. I know I've had that feeling before where it's when people you care about, if you feel like they're ignoring you or that you don't exist to them, that's one of the like scariest, most unnerving, horrible feelings you can ever have as a person.
And imagine, like, in this book, no one in the family realizes that Lily has been replaced because they're under some spell. And how do you know that you're not under that spell? How do you know that someone hasn't been replaced in your world? And given long enough, how do you know that you're not a replacement?
How do you know you're not the cow or not the not cow?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. This just sounds so incredibly, oh my God, so good. So many good things, so many just amazing elements to this world. I'm just like, need to read it. Well, it sounds like this book is obviously already out and you guys can purchase it at the link above. But when is the second one coming out? Because there's been a couple mentions to that.
So the second one is due out May next year.
Awesome.
That's how far we do them in advance. I will have, like, I'm working on a lot of things, but so the ebook of this first one, I think, comes out in a couple of months, and we have the preview of the short stories, and then the book of short stories should be out in January, I think. And then second volume of this, which is finished, is out May. And I think you guys are doing, for this first one, you guys are doing a bookplate edition, right? So if people buy it now, they get, I should, listen, at the moment, because of the lockdown, I have currently the only signed copy of this book. And it says in it, to Richard, keep working at it, and one day you may have a book as nice as this one. XOXO, Richard.
I love that.
That's the kind of top quality signature you're going to get if you buy the bookplate edition.
I think that is a very high incentive indeed. I think it is. Well, are there any other projects too that you can tell us about? You said that you've got a lot on the stove.
Well, I have a series. We were meant to be in Free Comic Book Day this year, but of course that got canceled. So there are 47,000 copies of a Black Sand Beach short story sitting in comic stores all across the country that no one can get. But it will be available later. That's a story called Eat the World, and it's all about what are monsters afraid of. And, because like some monsters, they want to destroy everything, but some monsters, sure, they want to like eat children's livers and stuff, but they also really like cool music and just hanging out. So they got to keep enough kids around that they have enough livers to eat. I mean,
maybe that you have to have a kid farm so that you can have a comfortable eating style.
Wow,
and
you went straight to farming children.
I went right there. I couldn't help it.
So there's that. So I also have another comic series called Blastosaurus, which is I've been working on for 10 years. It was the highest selling comic in New Zealand the whole time I was there. And then I relaunched it here 2 years ago. There's 15 issues out so far. It's about a mutant triceratops who works in a laundromat that doesn't obey the laws of space and time.
That's amazing.
It's very fun. And I'm working on a book. I just finished the first 2 chapters of a new graphic novel series called Cardboardia, which I think will be out next year as well. And it's about, also from Pixel and Ink, and it's about 4 kids who get strange tokens in their cereal and then find that they can travel back and forth through cardboard boxes into a world where everything is made of cardboard.
That's cool.
So that one's aimed a little younger, but it's kind of like high. I call it low budget, high fantasy. And then I'm working on a book at the moment as well that we're writing right now, a comedy anthology called Crinimals, Animals Who Crime. And the linking thread is it's all just animals committing crimes.
Oh.
And that one, it's in the very early stages, but I'm having like a lot of fun with that.
Well, all of them sound amazing. I feel like I could poke your brain for forever because you have such an amazing imagination, and just hearing you talk about the worlds and getting to see these small little snippets, like I want more. Like I automatically want more of like all of the things you've been talking about.
I promise you, I will like when I'm in a normal state and not in this. I'm going to show you the disaster of my home right now. Of just everything everywhere is a mess. But when I'm in a normal state, I can produce 4 pages of comic every day. So once I get back to full strength and a normal life, I will have so many comics for everyone.
Well,
I mean, I have 200. Black Sand Beach is my 275th published book.
You know, I think that definitely deserves a couple feathers in the cap.
Yeah.
That is quite an impressive number. Well,
I mean, some of them aren't very good.
Well, I know that I'm really excited to get to read more of your stories, and I know if that's how I'm feeling, that I'm sure our readers are feeling that way too. So if you guys want to buy all of the amazing stories, check that link up below. We're going to go ahead and sign off for tonight. Sorry, I haven't done this on my phone before, so
we're going to get a quick goodbye from the situation, who's been sleeping in my lap for a little.
Oh, the situation! The cutest
you're
little
such a
baby.
sweetie. GTL, guys.
Yes.
Gym and laundry.
During
Always
these times,
remember.
it is an important motto to live by. Well, okay, the Facebook stream is now ending. Goodbye, guys.
Bye, guys.